and welcome back. You and I for the Kenai. I'm with Koebryn again today, and we're back at the Serenity Intake office recording another awesome recovery story. We're here with TJ today. How's it going, TJ?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. We've been having some really good conversation here already this morning. We've been taking off about some things we're passionate about. TJ about recovery, me about college sports.
Yes. The way that you're saying that, it makes it sound like it wasn't just football.
All right, man. We'll jump right into this. TJ, where are you from, man?
I was born in Soldotna, Alaska, in 1986. I grew up in Kenai, Alaska. I went to school, first Sears Elementary, then I went to Mountain View, and then the middle school, and then high school. My whole life has been pretty much in a 15-mile radius. Let me think. My parents, I have, a mom and a dad. Pretty much everybody does, right?
Pretty standard.
Anyway, so my parents got divorced. I think I was around like 6 months old, so I grew up in 2 different homes. So I don't really remember like what life would be like with when your parents are together.
Right.
Well, I don't remember at all because I was 6 months old.
Mm-hmm.
But my mom, I would stay at my mom's house for the 5 days out of the week, and then I'd go to my dad's house on the weekend, and I did that for a long time, up until I was 16. And my dad was working a lot too, so I would stay at my grandmother's house a lot, which was pretty cool. She's a really good person. From there, I was going to school. I was doing good things. Pretty normal kid. Other than like some oddball stuff. Like I kind of grew up in an abusive home a little bit. Not so much verbally, but physically. So I had a lot of resentment to a lot of like authority figures.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you can't tell me what to do,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't feel like I was getting enough attention at home, so I would like act out in schools because any bad attention is still attention, right?
Yeah.
So I got into a lot of fights. I would do really stupid things just to get some sort of resemblance of love or whatever have you.
Right.
Were you like aware of that at the time?
No,
or
I was
is it
not.
Looking back, you're like,
It was looking back, yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. I it makes sense now that I'm like in the last 5-6 months I've come to a lot of conclusions that I had no idea even were a thing.
Right.
So from there, pretty much all the way up until I was in 8th grade, I got shipped out over to Dutch Harbor to live with my aunt for a year. I did really, really well over there. I was on the honor roll. I didn't miss one day of school. I didn't get in any fight. Well, yeah, kind of, but not really.
That one doesn't count.
Yeah. You weren't as violent as you
Yeah,
had before,
exactly.
Yeah.
And then I moved back here, got into high school, and started playing football. Oh, let me back up for a second. Right around the time I left is when I started drinking for the first time. I got drunk for the first time when I was 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I had sexual relations for the first time when I was about 12 years old. So I was I'm 12 years old, but I'm a man.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And then I smoking cigarettes, hanging out with the bad kids because I didn't care.
Right.
Any friendship or any connection there was good enough for me, right?
I think that's the big one, dude. Yeah, especially when you grow up in a home that's disconnected in a lot of ways, whether it be physical or emotional or anything like that, there's a part of you that yearns for that connection.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Any sort of connection.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the cool thing, quote, air quotes, cool, about that bad group is you can find a sense of pride in the misfits. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We all have a sense of this disconnect that brings us together. That group, dude, is always and through a lot of the stories we've heard, dude, there's a couple that come to mind and just some personal stories. Always a very accepting group.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's a tempting group.
When we get into that recovery part of this conversation, that's one of the things I've actually found is that connection, this unity that people talk about. I have, what's that? I have no idea what you're talking about, because my connections were. We'll get there when we get there. So.
In my mind, it's especially if you're not getting the attention that you're saying.
Yeah.
And then you have one group, and literally all you have to do is smoke a cigarette or
Yeah.
drink a shot of whiskey, and they hype you up. I'm sure
Exactly.
they're just like, oh my gosh, the madman. You're like, yeah, dude. When I was 12, I was drinking and sexual relations. They're like, oh my gosh, this man is the legend.
And then your ego just gets bigger and bigger
and
and bigger.
you gotta keep doing crazier things to keep getting the reaction.
Oh yeah,
Like,
the last week was never good enough. You got to figure out what's going on this week, right?
Mm-hmm. And then soon you're known for the person. You're known as a person who does the crazy things. And it's just like, it's kind of a downward spiral almost.
Yeah.
It can be.
Oh, dude, definitely. Like, there's a reputation there that you have to uphold. Well, you don't have to uphold it, but my mind tells me that, like, hey, if you want to keep your friends because they're always fleeting, and like you got to do these things.
Yeah, and inside you're just afraid of rejection, kind of. So you got to keep revving it up.
Dude, it's always one of those things too, when you get into like to be the crazy guy, you know, or like the fun guy. Like everybody's your friend, so the cops show up.
Oh yeah,
You
right.
look around and everyone's gone. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Well, you also figure out a couple things, like when the cops show up, if they've shown up enough, just don't open the door.
Right.
Don't talk to them. Kids aren't supposed to know that stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's the crucial key, dude. Is like, you get, especially 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
Like really aren't supposed to know that stuff. You are supposed to get caught.
Yes.
You know what I mean? When
You're
you're like
supposed to get in
17,
trouble.
18, you know, and then like, then that's kind of like that negative or that reinforcement where like you're kind of supposed to stop after that. You know, get in trouble all the times. Like if it comes to that, and usually like normal people, air quotes again.
Normal people.
Yeah.
Sometimes lack of consequence is a lot worse.
Right.
Basically. I mean,
Definitely.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like I lived with my dad for like 16 till like just recently, like off and on. And when I was growing up, I didn't get in trouble for basically anything. Like I could go out and get drunk and fight somebody, and then come home and he'd be like, "Just don't do that again." I'd be like, "All right, I won't." And the next week I'm doing the same thing. That's the insanity, you know.
yeah.
Right.
So, anyway, so 8th grade, like I come home from 8th grade, right? And then I'm home for the summer, and I was supposed to go back, but I talked my mom into letting me staying. And then I started playing football, and then I found the new love of my life, you know. And then with football, and if you're any good at it or whatever, comes drinking, comes heavy drinking on the weekends, you know. And then that's when the craziness sets in, like the, what did you do last night, and like who did you fight, or who did you hurt, or did you end up with clothes on at the end of the night, or were they off, you know, shit like that.
Party scene.
Yeah, and I mean, and like
Pretty stereotypical, honestly.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So like it went from like football, my first love, to partying, my first love, like that connection that we were talking about. So I'm trying to build connections with whoever, doing whatever to do it, right? So like pretty soon, like my junior year, I was like, well, I'm just gonna hang out with my friends, so I'm gonna quit school. So I quit school. You know, I had a good, like I maybe could have played college football or whatever, but I thought drinking and hanging out with my friends were more important than just doing like driving down the road the wrong side of the road drunk and thinking it was funny. That's crazy.
Yeah.
True.
That's dangerous behavior.
Yes. Yeah, and then like that's that God complex. Like nothing ever is gonna happen to me, and I will never get hurt. Like I thought I was invincible, you know.
So like, what's? I mean, obviously you want to hang out. Like, did you have like a job in mind, or like did you
No,
just have
dude.
one day where
Nope.
just like I'm just gonna quit
Nope.
school?
Yeah, I was just like, I'm done. Yeah, I give up. I'm gonna go drink on the like. First it was the weekends, and then it turned into like every other day, and then every day. It was just it got out of hand, and then
What did your mom and dad say when you told them you were quitting school?
I wasn't living with my mom, so I didn't care what she had to say. But
Right.
my dad was like, "Oh, don't do that." But I ended up doing it anyway, and
Right.
not really much to be said. He was kind of like more of a friend than a dad.
Yeah.
Like at the end there, he was my best friend. Like yeah, and I got like shortly thereafter, I got my first minor consuming, camping out over at Longmere, and like sleeping in a car. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning, and a park ranger knocks on the window and says, "Hey, I need to give you a sobriety test." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like, why don't you believe me? I wasn't drinking." Well, and I blew like a 1.8 or something like that, and that's already sleeping for 4 hours. So like it was getting out of hand. So that was my life all the way up to like I was 22, just from 16 to 22, just drinking all the time and hanging out with friends, and you know, just doing whatever for like just to feel, basically, to feel anything. And then after that, like I got into a serious relationship, and I was dabbling in drugs by then too. Like I
Yeah.
was like some oxys or whatever, and some coke here and there, whatever. Just mainly at this time, just to.
Is it kind of one of those things where like you're at the party, someone
Yes.
has it, and
Yeah.
then you're just
Yeah.
like, oh, I'll try it.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm already
Yeah.
pretty drunk anyway.
Yeah, and then it turned into like, well, the coke thing turned into like a whole summer thing.
Oh. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
It started with like I was like, oh, I'll never do drugs. I'll just drink alcohol, which is a drug. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
So and then somebody brought coke, and I was like, did you bring that? That's horrible, man. He's like, you want some? I was like, yeah.
That is the worst. Give it here.
Yep.
Come on. Yeah.
I'll try
confiscate
anything
that.
once.
I think that's something that kind of is like to be hit on too. You know, when you feel that disconnect, you know, like I feel like when you're dabbling in that stuff, dude, like especially when you're like, man, I wouldn't want any of my friends to do this.
Right.
So I better just do it all for them.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, like, I care about them a little more than me.
Right. And then it
You're
turns
like,
out it's
yeah.
about I just care about me, so I'm gonna do this by myself.
Right.
Um,
I think there's a disconnect between consequence and action after a certain amount
Oh,
of
yeah.
time spent in that like limbo of just kind of partying and hanging out. It's like, oh look, this nothing bad happened tonight and
Yeah.
that night, and soon you're not even worried about it. First you're like,
Right.
man, this cocaine could really mess me up. Day 17 or whatever, you're like, all right, line it up, let's go.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
It's like it's another night.
yeah, exactly. And it's you're like playing with fire basically, but you forget that it's fire.
Well, and then like you said, I had that God complex, so nothing
Yeah.
bad ever could happen to me. So I was just like, I'll do anything. You know, I tried ecstasy and stuff like that for the first time, mushrooms, and just all in probably like a 2-year time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Just doing whatever, like to get out of my own self, like just
Right.
doing whatever I could. And most of the time it was just like somebody else's. Like I never went and sought it, but I knew it was gonna be there. So I'm doing that for a few years, and then I get into this relationship, and I kind of calm down a little bit. And like I said, I tried oxys and other opiates and stuff, and I didn't like it wasn't the best thing in the world. Like I like oh it makes me feel pretty good, whatever. So I'm in this relationship for like 8 months, and like it ends badly. Like it was like probably the worst breakup I've ever been through. Just because I had feelings that I didn't know that I could actually feel, and then so I was like, well, I know what opiates did for me when I was happy. Maybe they'll help me when I'm sad.
Mm-hmm.
So I started taking them a little bit at a time, and like it would take the pain away. It would still suck, but you could sleep through anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then a little bit more each day, and then pretty soon I became addicted to it, like physically addicted to it, and like then I became addicted to the part about not feeling, like all the feelings and emotions I've ever had, like the ones I couldn't handle as a kid growing up drinking and hanging out with friends were gone. Like I didn't have to deal with them anymore.
Probably does a lot for your God complex too, because now you can't feel much on a physical level
Yeah.
and an
Oh, dude,
emotional and mental level.
Exactly. And then like I had this delusion that I was gonna wake up one day and everything was gonna be fine. On its own. Like no work,
Right.
no work for me. I was just gonna wake up and I'm gonna have my own house and my own. Well, I had a car, but cars and a family and a white picket fence and everything is gonna take care of itself. All I gotta do is sleep the rest of my life.
Or at least the pain will go away. I mean, that's the thought is that, I can't feel the pain. Maybe it's gone. Wait
Yeah.
a certain amount of time, like, oh, no, it's not.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
back
Well,
at it again.
I found out a few months ago that it never left. It was just like doing push-ups in the cellar.
I love that analogy. That was awesome.
That's how they're getting yoked.
Dude, the pain. If you were ignoring
Well, dude,
your
you gotta be doing
pain,
push-ups because you're pushing it down so far. It's
Yeah.
just
oh,
like
there you
push
go.
back. Ugh.
It's
Yeah.
just that, yeah. But that's a good analogy. That it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Just because you don't look at it.
Yeah, pretty soon the door was unlocked and it all just came at once. Like she was like, anything that you have ever pushed down, here you go. You can have it right now.
Wow.
Yeah, it was tough to deal with there for a minute, but
What was that like? What was that like moment like? You know what I mean? Like that day, like when you're coming. I'm imagining it obviously happened in recovery, but we'll just like this moment. You know what I mean? You kind of catch yourself like in that whirlwind of emotion. Like
well, I was at detox for. I was at the end there. I was on methadone, and methadone is very long acting and takes a while to come off of. So I was there for 38 days, which is kind of the record. Not a record I'm proud of, by the way.
Right.
And then, I was told, like, right before I went to the Serenity House, they were like, well, you're gonna start feeling some feelings that you haven't felt in a long time, and I just want you to be prepared for that. And I was like, what do you know? I feel great. And then so I'm sitting there with like contempt and just like some resentments against people like that. I have no business resenting or contempting. They're just here to help me, but my mind tells me that I don't need help. I'm here for another reason because I want a place to sleep at night. And then so I'm just like, whatever I need to do for myself is what I'm gonna do. And that's like the selfishness, that self-centeredness, all that. I lived that for a long time, and I didn't know how to break it.
And I mean, honestly, that's kind of like one of those things about addiction too that we hear a lot. You know what I mean? It's like those justifications. Like, and not even necessarily justifications, but just the way it like flips your rationale. You know what I mean? Like people that are obviously here to help you. Like if you're looking from a third person point of view at somebody else, you know what I mean? You're like, oh man, that guy needs help. It's like a really good thing he's in detox. But it's you. It's like, dude, these people have no idea what they're talking about. I don't need to be here.
Exactly.
There's nothing to do with me.
You can't help me.
Yeah. It's like it just completely like, and it prioritizes. Like they say, addiction is like a conniving disease, man. Where it's like it will try to convince you that like this is what you need, the drugs or the alcohol. This is what you need. You don't need these people. They can't help you. This can. We gotta go back over here. We gotta get out of here and get back to what we're doing. We're flying.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because addiction and this disease, this is the only disease that will tell you that you don't have a disease. Like you don't have a problem. Your life is manageable. Like you can. It's okay. Like you're robbing people or whatever, but you have a job.
Look on the bright side, your addiction says. Yeah, you're sleeping in the gutter, but you're still eating.
Right.
Yeah. So, but
sometimes.
Yeah, I mean that's what it sounds like. And a common trend that I'm seeing with people who have been through addiction is that you basically, once you come out of it and you make that decision to change, you're still very much selfish. And I think that's pretty natural, human condition-wise.
Yeah.
But I think with the addition of basically pushing all of that down, you don't get the time to develop, like, caring about other people. Because it's really not a priority compared to feeling good.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been there.
My natural state is to be drunk, high, angry, or hurting somebody else. That's my natural state.
Yeah.
So it takes a little bit to come out of that and start working a new way of life, and it kind of like I did this for a long time, 13 years or whatever. So I'm not expecting myself to get all this I was expecting myself at the beginning, like I'm gonna get this tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So now it's like a little bit each day, and like to build myself up to that point where I can stay at this. Well, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
I was an angry person for a very, very long time, and to get out of that is going to take time. I mean, I still have some anger issues, but it's like way better today than it ever was in my entire life. So I can't expect myself to like change overnight. It's going to take some time because I didn't get addicted and up and off overnight, right? I mean, messed up and messed off. So I got to give myself the same amount of respect as in it took this much time, so give it some time, figure it out.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up though, because I never think of that if you've been doing it for that long, don't be like a month, it's gonna be fine, or even probably like a week is what you thought at the beginning. You're like,
oh yeah, dude.
By next Tuesday.
Well, no, at first I thought I would only need detox. I was like, and maybe some people only need that. It's not recommended, but and I was like, yeah, detox and I'll be fine. Everything will be great. Like drugs are my problem. Well, it turns out they're not my problem. The thing that lies between my head and my heart was the problem, and drugs were the symptom of this problem. It was just it was the easier way out. So,
we talk about that quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
Because dude, it's like my brother and I actually talk about this quite often. It's like, and we bring this up in the last 4 podcasts. Because it comes up all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like one of these, but it's just so important. You know what I mean? Like the use is the manifestation of the things that lie underneath, those emotional and physical, real, not any more or less real than your addiction, but those big ailments, you know what I mean? The undealt with emotions.
Yeah.
The trauma, stuff like that you faced when you were young and couldn't cope with. The lack of coping skills.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the use is just a manifestation of all these other things, like trying to express themselves. You know what I mean? Like in a just unhealthy way.
Yeah.
Because once you get done using, like you wake up one day and like you're clean for a while, and like you realize, dude, you still got some problems. You're
Oh
like,
yeah.
"Oh."
They don't go away just because the drugs go away.
Right.
You know. And then that was my delusional thinking. Like, yeah, drugs were my only problem. And like I honestly thought that. Like I didn't think it was anything else. I just thought like using drugs was the thing that was hurting people. Well, it turns out I was the thing that was hurting people, and I was hurting myself mainly. And then there's a man, he gave me an analogy on this. It's like dropping a pebble in the pond and it rippling out and hitting the whole shore.
Mhm.
So it starts with me, and then like that destruction, you know, that splash, that's where I'm
Right.
at, but then it hurts everybody around me also. So
Mhm.
but it takes time. It takes time to learn who you are and learn like why you're doing the things you were doing, and there's underlying issues for a lot of us, and to work through that stuff is important, you know, to be happy. And my life, I'm telling you right now, my life is better than it ever has been in my entire life. I didn't know that this life was possible. If I would have known that, I would have done it a long time ago. But you know, I'm here today, and that's all that matters. So give yourself a chance.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah. So you get out. So you get out of that relationship. You're using opiates more and more.
Oh yeah.
How old are you at this point?
22.
22.
Yeah. 21, 22. Right
Yeah.
around there.
So where does it go from here then?
So my dad, he let me back up for a second. When I was 16, he had a gastric bypass, and when he had that gastric bypass, he hurt his neck on the operating table. So he started getting hydrocodone, and I started stealing them from him, like every once in a while. And then pretty soon he just started giving them to me when I asked for them. So, and that was all the way up until I was 22, and then, or 21, 22. And then after this happened, like I was getting them from him almost every day. And then, if I couldn't get them from him, then I would find them from somebody else to go buy them. And then that just progressed. Like it went from like, oh, you feel horrible here. He was just trying to help me out. Like he was trying to help me feel better, and he didn't know any other way. So I'm not blaming my father for any of the things he did. It was my decisions that brought me here. Anyway, so it progressed into like a partnership. Like there was like he had a prescription, and then eventually I finagled. Like I got messed up shoulders from playing hockey and football, so I finagled my way into getting my own prescription, like a paying contract. So it was like he would get his on a certain time of the month, and I would get mine, and we would just share like back and forth. But we still couldn't make it through the entire month, which is nuts.
That's all good, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, and this literally, I didn't do anything for like 8 to 9 years. This was my life, was just watching movies, sleeping, and doing drugs. Like literally nothing. I mean, I had a couple of relationships that I was just in it for, like, just using them for what I could get from them, like money
Right.
or, you know, rides, whatever have you. Like, it didn't matter what sex,
Right.
obviously.
Yeah.
It didn't matter what it was. I was just at the point of just using people for what they could give me and not for what I could bring to anybody else's life. So, I mean, it progressed and it got really bad there for a minute. You know, I was up to, and I don't usually like to talk about how much I was taking because it's not really that important. But, you know, I was on a paying contract, and I was up to like 270 methadone, 10 milligrams a month, and I couldn't make them last 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I was from 2014 all the way to 2019, I was doing that. So, you know, and in between there, like in 2010, my dad got sick with cancer. So I ended up taking care of him. I got, you know, I was working for I was a PCA working for a company, taking care of him, and then also being, you know, messed up all the time. Kind of not a great mix right there. Like, but I did.
Going on.
Yeah, I did the best I could. I was going through, even though I didn't really feel it, like the emotions, I was going through a lot of stuff because my dad, like I said, he was my best friend. And it's not just because we shared drugs. It was because he's always been there for me. Like even before the drug use, he was always there for me. He was, you know, anytime anything bad happened, you know, he was that hero in my life. Like I'll come take care of it. I'm not saying that's the way to do it. I'm just saying that was my life. So from 2010 to 2018, he was sick. He was doing pretty good for the most part, but in 2018, like in a month span, it just came, like his cancer came back because he went through chemotherapy and all that stuff, and it went away. And it was like one day he was okay, and then the next day we were in the hospital, and then we were being life flighted over to Anchorage, and then he ended up passing on January 13th, 2018, and that was rough. I mean, that's when I was like, it, life doesn't even matter. Like, what's the point? You're gonna lose everybody anyway, so just do the worst you can, you know. So from there, you know, I stayed at his house for a few more months, and then that got sold, so I had no place to live. And then I moved over with my best friend, and like he's clean and sober, and I'm still there using drugs, right? And that went on for about 6 months, and you know, then he told me, he's like, dude, you gotta go, and I was like, what do you mean I gotta go? He's like, well, you need to go to like rehab or something because you're not doing anything. Like you're just living, like you're just sleeping and going to work. And then I had lost my job around that time too, for anger issues. Not like I was a resident assistant, and it wasn't at the clients or anything. It was at the people that work there, because I'm in control at this point, right? I think I'm in control. So if you're not doing it my way, you're not doing it the right way. And then and if you're not doing it the right way, I'm gonna let you know you're not doing it the right way. That's how messed up my thinking was. So I went from there. Like we had the conversation. I was like, okay, I'll go, and that's what I was talking about, going to detox so I could get my place to sleep back, right? So I was like, yeah, all I need is detox, and I'll be okay. You know, I'm gonna mention God here, and when I say God, I don't mean like, you know, that big bearded guy up in the sky. I mean my interpretation of God, and God is just a title for me. It's not like Jesus or. So when I got there, like I'm sitting there, I didn't want to be there. You know, not feeling very good. Just all I can do is watch movies, really, right? And I ended up staying for 38 days, and I have no idea how I did that. I have literally no idea how I did that, because I didn't want to stay anywhere for more than 10 minutes, let alone 38 days. So I'm, you know, and then I honestly do not remember filling out the packet to go to Serenity House. I don't ever remember saying yes. I just remember showing up, and then like that feeling, like we were talking about, the person said you're gonna get these feelings back, and they're gonna kind of come back all at once, and you know you're not gonna know what to do, but you just need to calm down and stay and figure it out. It was like I said, contempt prior to investigation. I was like, yeah, whatever. But I was sitting there, like first day I was there, and
can we just for a second?
Yeah.
Contempt prior to investigation. I've heard some other people in recovery like just mention that, and I've never actually dove into that. So what exactly?
Contempt prior to it's like
is that something like you learn about like?
Yeah, it's like like detox can't help me. Like Serenity House can't help me because they have no idea what they're doing. Like they don't know me. My pain is way worse than anybody else's pain. Anybody else has gone through. So I have contempt for these people way before I've even investigated it, like way before I even tried it out. So this is one of the things that lead us back into using drugs.
Is that one of those things you talk about like in house?
Oh yeah. Oh, you talk about it out of house too. You know, at other places. Let me mention that I am part of the recovery 12-step program. So like we learn a lot about ourselves like every day, and then it's an honest program, so we have to be honest with ourselves first, right? And then like also when you get into recovery, you get your conscience back, and you get this thing called guilt back that I hadn't felt in a long time. And it's hard for me to do the wrong thing now and like not tell anybody about it because it eats me up. Like anyway, yeah, dude, it's a whole new world out there. It's different living an honest life. Right? Like even when I was younger, I didn't live an honest life. Like I was lying all the time. I was cheating, stealing, whatever have you. But now it's these things that I did in my past don't have to be the pain of my future. And to live this kind of honest life it's actually a great thing, and life is so much easier today. Like the peace that I have today is like doesn't even come close to any high that I've ever had. So I mean, I can fall asleep at night, you know, no problem, because I have a clear conscience. I hadn't hurt anybody today. I hadn't stolen anything. I hadn't, you know, whatever. You know, I haven't went to work high. You know, so it's I don't know. it's really good life, and I recommend it if you are in your addiction and you're going through a rough time. It just takes a little bit of time to get out of that, but once you get out of that, you can see that life, there's a meaning behind our life. It's not just what we can do for ourselves either.
That kind of leads back to that contempt before investigation in a sense, because while you were basically, taking like 230 pills every 2 weeks about?
Yeah, 270.
270, yeah. So basically at that point, I would assume every emotion but this kind of vague euphoria, that's all that's left.
Even the euphoria was
There's
pretty much like gone. It was just like
expended.
Yeah, it was like time to go to sleep, take some pills.
Yeah.
Wake up, time to go to sleep, take some pills. Like I was barely awake for a few minutes and then I was back to sleep.
Yeah.
Unless I was watching a movie, then I don't like. That's one thing about doing drugs too. You can watch the same movie 15 times and it still be new every time, because you're
never
like,
saw it, right?
yeah, it's like just seeing it through like tinted like backwards binoculars, just not there.
Yeah. So even after all that, where basically you didn't really feel anything at all, and then you come off this and you go through these really intense emotions that you haven't felt in forever, but after all that, and still experiencing pain today in the same way, that you didn't have before, it's still worth it to you. You say, this life is so rewarding, and this is kind of like the contempt before investigation, because now you've investigated what is a sober life? What is that like? Is that worth not feeling any pain, versus not feeling any pain, rather? And it is worth going through the struggle, and it's just awesome to hear you say that.
Oh, sorry.
That now that it seems obvious, but at the time you were like, there's no way that's going to be good.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things that I didn't touch on, but I was writing, like a week before I went into house, I was writing with, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me telling you guys this, my brother. He's also in recovery. And it's like he's got like 4 months longer than I do. And his friend. And I'm sitting there looking at him, and I actually just told them both this yesterday. It's like, I'm looking at him, and I'm like, they look happy, but I'm never gonna have this. Like this is not possible for me. I'm different. Like, I don't know how they did it. I don't know why they did it, but it's not gonna happen for me. Mm-hmm. But I ended up going and doing it anyway, and I proved myself wrong. I proved that that voice in my head that tells me that I'm different than everybody else. That I don't need anybody else. That all I need is a bed to sleep in and a handful of pills. That addict voice, that ego voice, they're kind of hand in hand with me. Tells me I don't need anyone, at all, ever. And I proved that part of me wrong, which is awesome. And it still kind of gives me goosebumps thinking about it, because it's my eyes are a little bit more open each day. Yeah, like a couple weeks before, or a week or so before I got into rehab, my brother is also in the recovery program. And he was doing it 4 months before me. So I think my sister was giving us a ride, and I think I just came here to the intake office to get the packet to go to detox. And she was dropping my brother and his friend off, and they both had around the same amount of time. And I remember consciously looking at them and being like, that's never going to be me. They look happy, they look healthy, they look like they're on the right track, but that's never going to be me, because my pain and my suffering is way worse than anybody else's. And that's that selfishness, the self-seeking stuff that, I'm different than everybody else. This is my ego too. You haven't gone through the same things I've gone through. And a lot of us, we have similar things we've gone through, and then some of us don't have any similar things at all. But we all have that same feeling of that hopelessness that we went through, and that the pain of loneliness and depression, all that. So there, it doesn't matter if you you lived in a mansion and I lived on the ditch or whatever in the gutter. We both have that common bond of life is hopeless and just being unhappy about everything. There was literally nothing that made me happy. Even drugs didn't make me happy anymore. So I remember looking at them and just how am I ever gonna get this? Because and eventually, I went into detox in 38 days. There was no recovery in detox for me. This was just a place for me to get cleaned up so I could find recovery. And like I was saying, like I stayed there for 38 days. Have no idea how I did it. Like, because I wanted to leave every day, but I didn't for whatever reason. And then, like, I don't remember really filling out the packet for Serenity House, and I don't remember ever saying yes to going to Serenity House. I barely remember the interview or whatever it was to go in there. Anyway, so I remember showing up my first day, and I'm sitting there, right, and like, no, it was the second day, because I showed up through half the day, and then I woke up the next day, didn't really sleep very well. Sitting at the table, and if you've ever been in that room, and there's a bunch of handprints on the wall, and there's some sayings next to the handprints, and there was this one on the ceiling, and it said, two handprints in the middle of it said surrender. And that's when, like, those feelings that we were talking about came back, and they started all coming back all at the same time, and I started crying, and I was like, where is this coming from? Like, I was like, maybe I'm just depressed that I'm here. I don't know what it is. Well, it turns out, like, I was a little depressed because, I'm also losing something I knew my entire life, which was drugs, right? Comfort of sorts. So I'm grieving the past me, but I'm also feeling a bunch of stuff that I have never felt. Well, not never, but haven't felt in years and years and years, and I never really grieved when my dad passed, so I'm feeling all those emotions too, and like, it was a struggle for a minute there. Like, it was a real big struggle for a minute. I mean, I don't recommend doing this, because maybe this is just what it took for me to make it through, is 3 days into it, I actually left Serenity House. Because I was just like, I'm tired, like, I just want to sleep, and I just want to be left alone. I wasn't sleeping anyway, because I was still going through withdrawals. Mm-hmm. So, like, a bed change was going to, change that, right? Like, that's my delusional thinking again. So, I left, I walked down the road, and this is, like where, my higher power kind of showed himself a little bit. So I walked down the road, and I'm standing, like, thumbing for a ride, right? And usually I can get a ride within, like, 5 minutes or so. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting there, like, 20 minutes, half an hour. And the first person that drives by is my sister's husband. And it's, like, yeah... and then he doesn't give me a ride, doesn't pick me up or anything. But when he goes to work, he takes a right to go to Homer instead of a left to go into K Beach. Mm-hmm. And he took a left that day to go get something to eat, which he never does, which is crazy in itself, right? And then so I'm there for another 20 minutes. I didn't even see him, but I'm there for another 20 minutes, and the first person that shows up is my sister. Like, I could have got a ride at any time, right? So she picks me up. She's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, I don't want to go back. I don't like it there. And she's like, "Well, you just need to do it." So we have this conversation. Anyway, so I was like, "I just want to smoke a cigarette, and then we'll go back to the intake office or whatever." I don't know. So I smoke a cigarette, and I hop back in the car. She's like, "Okay, we're going over to this place," and it was who is now one of my sponsors works, or his work, and like I had met him before, and so we went and we ate lunch, and that's when he became my sponsor. And walking into that, there's a few other things that happened, but walking in, like, I'm wearing my dad's sweatshirt that says Bad Company on it. It's like one of the last things I have of him. And on the jukebox is playing Bad Company. And then I was like, hello, And then, like, it still kind of gives me goosebumps thinking about it today. There's so many, like, synchronicities that have happened to me since then, like the things that, I mean, you can explain them away, but I just don't anymore, because it, like, doesn't really make sense to. Yeah. So a lot of things happened on that day, and I ended up going back about 4 or 5 hours later to Serenity House, and I stayed the entire time I was there. I didn't try and get away with anything. I didn't smoke cigarettes while I was there, I try, and which is not like me, because I'm trying to take any angle to get out faster, or to get what I want. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I ended up staying, and then I remember being read this thing, which it made, like, it's one of those aha moments too, because I grew up Catholic and going to church and stuff, and this is what God thinks, and if you don't do this, then you're going to go to hell and all this. And this person had read this thing to me, and it said that basically said that I don't have to comprehend God, I don't have to put a label on it, I don't have to follow a religion, I just have to know that there is a God out there, or there is a higher power than me, and like, the higher power, it's not me. Because if I was a higher power, I definitely wouldn't be sitting here right now, as a drug addict and an alcoholic. I would probably be a billionaire somewhere, All I know is I didn't make the sky, I didn't make the sunrise today, So I call it the universe and energy. You know, you can call it whatever you want. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but that's just like what these things that kept me there. Like
Right.
because I opened up my mind a little bit more to other people's experiences and stuff instead of just my own. And then now, like, I'm like full on into this whole recovery thing. Like before, like I was just kind of there, because my life is good today. I have a son. You know, he was born when I was in rehab, and I definitely wanted to be there for him. But I realized I had to do that first before I could be part of his life. And I see him almost every day now, which before wouldn't have been an option, like at all.
Sleeping too much.
Well, that and like, who wants to be around an asshole 24/7?
Right.
You know, and the relationships that I went through, like the relationship I was in with this person, like I just treated her horribly. Like that, you know, there's no excuses behind it, but I am a drug addict, and I was in my addiction, and I was out for what I wanted. So it just, like, it was break up, get back together, break up, get back together, and then, like, that delusional thinking, like, okay, if we get married, this is going to solve our problems, right? Okay, if we have a kid, this is going to solve our problems. Which is just nuts. Like I said before, I was like, I'm going to wake up one day and everything's going to be perfect, right? It takes work. It takes time. Like, you have to give yourself a chance. You know, life is better on the other side. I promise that. It's a promise.
I think that, like, you know, being able to feel kind of goes two ways, you know what I mean? Because, like, when you're in your addiction, like, yeah, you don't feel. Like, you don't feel the pain, right? You don't feel any of these negative things.
Yeah.
But you don't feel any of the good things either.
Zero.
You know what I mean? Like, you just don't feel anything. Like,
yeah, you don't, like your happiness is gone. Like, you don't have the ability to, for one, like, physically, you don't have, like, in your brain, you don't have the ability to feel happiness anymore, because all the dopamine from my brain is being used up all the time.
Right.
So it's lacking. So it takes them, like, when you first get out of the using, it takes a minute to build that stuff back up. It actually takes up to 2.5 years before your brain's healed.
Right.
And I'm not saying, like, it normal healed. I'm just saying, like, before it's healed from the damage you've done. Like, there's a lot of dark places in my brain, like the prefrontal cortex. And they've done scientific things on this. That it's dark, like, they PET scan people, and it's dark.
Right. The activity,
it's dark, yeah. The decision-making part of your brain. Yeah, that's dark, so it takes time for it to light back up, and the way to do that.
This is when, like, the one time I really want Eric to be here. Because Eric's a psych major, right?
Yeah.
He loves talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
And he loves to interject, and always like, well, I learned in this one class once, and then this would be like the perfect time for him to interject.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, the research behind that, especially because, like, I learned this in class the other day.
Ooh.
Wow.
Wink, wink.
You went to school?
I did.
Hell yeah.
I
Nice
did.
job.
And
What's 9th grade like?
dude, I know, right? Couldn't tell you, barely passed.
You're only 7 grades above me.
But you're, like, it's really odd, dude, that, like, in humans, your prefrontal cortex is, like, the last thing to develop in your brain.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
25.
like, one of the most important parts of your brain,
Yeah.
the things that, like, affects a lot of your behavior, is the last thing to actually develop. So if you can refrain from using, like, drugs or alcohol, like, abusing drugs or alcohol, until you're 25, 26, 27, you're a lot better off and, like, way more likely to reach your maximum potential than if you don't.
Yeah, well, turns out I didn't, so
Right,
that's why I'm here.
But
Amen, brother.
it also makes sense that part would kind of turn off, because you have the amygdala in kind of the center of the brain, really small, but it's all about raw emotion, and it's faster responding. But once you kind of make all the decisions, the prefrontal cortex is like, I don't really have to make a judgment call. Like, this is easy. We don't need this.
Yeah.
Shut it down.
Well, I mean, you start out with these morals when you grow up, right? Like, you learn these things, like, don't hit, don't steal, don't rob people, don't go to jail, you know, things like that. But then, like, further on, you know, you get in your addiction, you start, like, twisting those morals, and pretty soon, like, anything, like, you can do anything because it doesn't matter anymore, right? So getting those things back now is kind of, it's not a struggle, but it is kind of the work process, the main work process. And once you get them back, like, once you get that conscience and the guilt back, I mean, it sucks, but it's a great thing. Like,
Right.
and then, now I know when I'm not being very spiritual. When I say spiritual, it just means good, because spirituality just means being a good person to me.
Right.
So like, I know when I'm being an or I know when I did something wrong, like now, or I know when I'm hurting somebody else because I can feel it now when I didn't before. Or if I did even feel any resemblance of it, just a handful of pills would take that away.
Right.
And it was just easier to do something worse the next time. Because if I already did that, like, it's a progressive thing.
And interestingly enough, you know who else has a prefrontal cortex that's kind of blacked out?
Who?
Sociopaths.
Yay!
Yeah, no, I mean, it is, not saying that the two are related, but it's
Well,
interesting you talking about that. You're
yeah.
like, I'm rediscovering basically my morality,
Yeah.
which is something that kind of sociopaths lack. They just,
Yeah.
you know, they're like, I want that thing, that person's in my way, kill him.
Well,
Like,
that's
I don't-
basically what you become as a
Yeah.
sociopath. It's just about you at that point. It's not about anybody else. It's like what the next person can give you.
Yeah. So it's interesting that that's like, there's a recovery period almost from going into that moralist ground and then coming back out of it. There's like readjustment, but you can kind of get it back.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It will come back if you let it come back. And then, but the important part is you have to feel these things. You can't just push them down. I mean, you can. It's not recommended because you're just gonna go get sick again and go back out because you're not gonna like. They will come back regardless. Like the feeling and the thing is, I know I have a guide to deal with these things today. I mean, I have a bunch of coping skills that I'd never had before. And a lot of the times, you know, I just take it out of my hands completely. If I'm doing something that I'm not sure about, I call somebody else first, and you know, I'm saying, what's your opinion on this? And maybe I don't agree with them, so I call somebody else. So if I get it 3 different times, then I'm probably messing up, right? But the person I go to now is the person I trust very, very much, and he hasn't steered me wrong yet. And so if he says, you know, this is probably not the best idea, I'm gonna go with that.
Right.
There's a saying, it says, you know, first thought wrong, second thought wrong, third thought, call your sponsor.
Right.
But
So.
what a kind of laying down pride and being willing to basically have a couple other people make that decision for you,
Yep.
people that you trust. But that takes a lot. It takes a lot for people even to reach out for help.
Yeah.
So to have you who previously in your life, you know, you're like, I'm always right. It's my
Yeah.
way or the highway. Get out.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I'm going to call 3 people to see if this decision is
Yeah.
okay. Just that contrast is
Yeah.
so awesome to see that you can have that kind of reversal of ego where
Yeah.
it's like, it's all about me to, I have support and I'm going to use that.
Well, I mean,
That's awesome.
my ego is still there. It's not as vast as it used to be, but it's still there. But like, I fight against it now instead
Yeah.
of like just acting on it. And yeah, there was something I was gonna say. Like I was like, oh, light bulb, but now I can't remember
So
what
we
it
can
was.
turn it back on. We're talking about.
Oh no, yeah. There's a certain amount of surrender there. Like you have
Yeah.
to like I'm not powerful by any means. I can barely take care of myself. Like, so I need help. I need help from my friends in and out of the recovery community. I need help from my family, and I'm not afraid to ask. I'm not talking about monetary stuff. I'm talking about like life things. Like there are things that are like. Let me start out by saying this. Just because I'm in recovery and my life is better and great now, like I'm not gonna say great, but it's a whole lot better than it was. Doesn't mean bad things aren't gonna happen, because bad things have happened since I been in recovery. But I know how to I know there's a way to deal with these things now. When before I was just like, well, bad thing happened, I'm gonna go use drugs. Like when my dad passed away, there wasn't like, okay, these are the things I'm gonna do to honor his memory, and this is a funeral and all this stuff. My first thought was, go use drugs. And then when those drugs end, go use some more drugs, So, like when something bad happens immediately, and again, this is, I'm gonna touch on God a little bit here, but it's not like, again, it's not that bearded guy up in the sky. It doesn't have to be. I pray, and I ask for guidance, and I ask for willingness, and then I'll call my sponsor, because usually, he's got enough time under his belt, he's come across a lot of things, so he'll steer me in the right direction. And if he doesn't know, he will tell me he doesn't know, and he will call his sponsor, or he'll call somebody else. So there's there's plenty of help out there if you're willing enough to ask for it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I've our listeners have heard this many times, but just touching on that topic again, I think using that network of support which you have is even more difficult in Alaska, just because there's that settlers kind of mindset. You have that if you cannot make it by yourself, then what is wrong with you? Kind of.
Exactly.
Like you're not climbing the mountains and hunting and stuff, and you can't control your home life or whatever. Then, well, you must just not be cut out for it. And it's not. I mean, humans are we like to hang out together. I mean, as much as everyone is like, people suck. You hear, I go shopping and there's all these people in the way.
I'm all peopled out.
Airports. Anyway, but in the end. There's also a really helpful side to it if you're willing to take advantage of it.
Well, there's a mountain and I'm climbing it, right? But and I have to do it, like I have to take my own path there. But there's somebody climbing right next to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's either a little bit higher than me. Doesn't mean they're better or worse. They're just on the same path and they've experienced a little bit more of it. So, like, why it'd be crazy for me not to ask for help from somebody when I like. That's this is crazy me even saying this because a year ago, whatever have you, I was always right, doesn't matter what it was, and if there was an argument, even if I thought you might be right, I would come up the other side of it just to prove you wrong. So it was a real big issue for me for a while. So I just I surrendered to the fact that I don't know most everything. Like there's a few things I know about, and still I don't know everything about it, right? And I'm not always right, even though that hurts to say sometimes. And I do need help. I'm going to need help for the rest of my life. This is not like a one and done kind of a thing. Now you got it, you're good for the rest of your life. This is an ongoing process that I'm going to have to do for the rest of my life, which sounds daunting, but it's really not. Once you start getting into the groove of things, it just becomes a way of life. And it becomes a good life. I recommend it. I recommend if you're going, if you're sitting on your couch right now, if you're in your addiction and your life is horrible, give yourself a chance. Just, call somebody, I'm sure, or Facebook somebody. I'm sure there's somebody that knows somebody that can help you. Or come to Solatna, there's an intake office here. They will help you. It doesn't matter, where you've come from, how much money you have, they will help you. Nobody deserves.
The intake office is at 245 North Binkley Street. You can also call the Serenity Intake office, and they'll get you set up with whatever help they can give you, and whatever help you're ready to take, honestly.
Yeah.
And so that number is 907-714-4521. Yeah, TJ, man, thank you so much. Really glad we had you on today. One more question, and then we'll get ready to wrap up.
All right.
If there's one thing you could tell yourself a year ago, from you today to you a year ago, what would that thing be?
You're worth it. There's gonna be some pain. There's gonna be some struggle, but I will come out of this thing ahead. Having relationships that I never thought were possible with I was talking about my brother. Our relationship there was messed up. It was just, what could we get from each other? We have a great relationship now. I have a relationship with my son, which was never going to be possible in my addiction. So just give yourself a chance is what I would say. Give yourself some time to grow. And, if you want to stay, great. If you don't, we'll gladly refund your misery. So, anyway, I appreciate you guys letting me talk. It's been an honor.
Oh, dude, no, thank you, man. We really appreciate having you here.
And just one last point. If you're out there and you believe that it's just going to be a lot of work, this whole recovery thing, it's not going to pay off. You're just going to have to do a bunch of stuff, and it's all going to be a flop because no one can help you. I believe that you're wrong. I think you're wrong. And it's at least worth trying. It's at least worth taking the step and going out there and seeing if there is something that is worth it, or that can help you to try to get a life that you feel is worth living, that's uniquely yours, and that's worth being in every day. So I just think that's important.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for listening. This is You and I for the Kenai.